Whenever you're dealing with any type of reboot of any long-established IP, you gotta remember what made that brand unique. What was the lure? What do the fans and dedicated base, or whatever this IP has, love so much about this brand? Whether if they are the original development team behind this IP brand that was established, or if they're a new team that's taking over the name and completely remaking it, they have to remember the lure. What do the fans love about this series? What is the core pull, and how can we expand on that? What do people want? What made them like these games, and how can we capitalize on that? It's hard when you're making a sequel. It's 10 times harder when you're rebooting it, because now you're running the risk of letting the established fan base know the identity of that game is potentially going to be altered, because priorities have ultimately shifted, and potentially the audience you're appealing to is going to shift. Compromises may have to be made, and the after product or the end product is going to be something that may not satisfy most or even all. And that is exactly what happened with Saints Row 2022. Look, I hate when people say this myself, but I have been a long-time fan of the Saints Row games. I refuse to let anything get in the way of how I perceive this game. I've been dying for a new Saints Row or Saints Row-like experience, and with how badly I wanted that, I figured it was the best idea to start up this game with the clearest head possible, to not reflect or really compare. Ultimately, even though I wanted to do that, it's hard not to do. You know, we're talking about a game that has been long established. It's an established series. Even if it is rebooted, it's going to be compared. And the reason why I still feel like people are justified to compare it to previous Saints Row experiences is because this game tries in a very different way to achieve the same type of humor that previous games have made. And I'll show you a few examples, but before it sounds like I completely shit on this game, I will say a few things that I did actually like. First one, I do like the color scheme of this game. Sure, the character models look a little rubbery or plasticky. Obviously, Saints Row has never been known for the photorealism, so I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying, comparing the environment itself to the character models, I think the character models look a little bit more cartoony versus how good the environments themselves look. And I do like the contrast in the environment itself, going from the desert to a downtown area. I don't think cities like this are really presented that often in video games. So for me personally, I do like the city. I think it's a little bit of a breath of fresh air, and I do like the health system. I do like the idea of takedowns to get some of your health back. It makes you a little bit more proactive. You're in charge of, obviously, your health. You don't have to go and hide and wait for your health to recover, disengage, and disrupt the flow of combat. This way, you're being a little bit more proactive. It's set on this little timer, so every kill that you get a bump in its cooldown rate, so then you get it back slightly faster, so that incentivizes you to basically go head first into the combat. I like that. And the animations for this stuff is goofy. You know, it's the same type of animations you would see with running up and teabagging someone in Saints Row 3, or just clotheslining the shit out of them for no reason. So the animations, I think, also fit in line with it. It's not entirely serious. It's not completely goofy. There are different animations because in this game there's a whole cosplay LARP gaming event where all the weapons and armor you wear are completely fake and the animations are completely different, pretending to rip someone's heart out or even pretending to actually hit them and not connecting. It's interesting. It's satisfying. It makes you want to take down enemies in a different way just to see the goofy shit that the developers have come up with. It's cool in that sense where you're seeing animations, takedowns, you know, this fantasy world within this game itself. However, personally, I don't like the weapons that are attached to it. I do like how the weapons look themselves. I mean, they're play weapons ultimately, but the fire rate, the impact of the guns themselves, or fake weapons, whatever you want to call it, just ultimately made me feel like conceptually the idea of having a LARPing fantasy world or game within this game was a good idea and it fits, but actually playing it, I found myself getting bored because I just didn't like the weapons you were given. Don't get me wrong, some people seem to have loved this part or element of the game, but for me, it just really didn't scratch that itch, but instead made this game's glaring issues even harder to ignore. Look, I know Saints Row has never been known for its photorealistic graphics or hardcore heavy realistic story, especially taking Saints Row 3 and 4 into consideration, or, you know, honestly, even just strictly talking Saints Row 3 here. The game was wacky. It had its moments of your character, the boss, being an over badass that reveled in the chaos, and at times was hilariously self-aware of his naivety and weirdly childish, lighthearted approach to killing. No matter what, or how you seen it, even if the Saints were in a bad position, the boss never got down or depressed about it, but brute forced their way into turning their situation around. And I'm not making the argument that every game has to be or feel the exact same, especially if we're talking a reboot. You can make changes and alterations to the game or series, but if you're going to do that, it shouldn't be a shallow attempt of what the series is known for. A lot of people got upset when Volition mentioned they weren't going to have this game toe the line like previous entries, which for many people meant that the beloved giant purple dildo bed was going to forever stay in the past. The series series was dead and the humor it was known for was forever gone. Well, it would have sucked for sure. I mean, who doesn't love a giant dick-shaped bat tearing shit up at a shop called Leather and Lace only to go around the corner and collect a crate of sex dolls? Shit, only Saints Row games are really known for that. Many people have already shit on the quote-unquote wokeness of the game and the ridiculous setup of some of the characters, like this guy never wearing a shirt and loving waffles so much he had a tattoo of it. But besides the fail in gameplay, which I can't even really put my finger on it, whatever it is, something about this game's combat just feels off. And I thought it was just a Saints Row thing and how Saints Row always felt and played, and I didn't think too much of it until I went back and played the third on PC and PlayStation 5. And yeah, I don't know if it's because of their approach to try and find a way to incorporate the new health and takedown system, or if the weapons themselves and how aiming is executed, it just feels funny. I don't know. Honestly, maybe it's just me. It felt a little funky. Maybe other players felt the same way though, since Volition was meaning to make some type of quote-unquote combat overhaul this month. But going back to the characters and story, the game's story, at least not the third and fourth anyways, weren't really all that memorable. At least not for me. I do remember some moments and dialogue simply for the laughs and absurdity, but not for the overall story. So the reboot honestly isn't that far off in that department, where Volition fucked up, for me at least, and this is still trying to give this game a fair shake, is their inability to have anyone give an actual fuck about these characters, their connection to one another, or even the player. Take Saints Row 3 for example. Without playing any of the previous Saints Row games, you can almost immediately tell the dynamic between Pierce, Shaundi, and the boss, or even Shaundi and her connection to Gat, who's only in the game for about 30 minutes max. That dialogue, the bickering, the shit talking is funny and it's enlightening. It helps you immediately be able to identify where everyone stands with each other, and while they may not be the best written characters, their banter between each other is just naturally absurd enough for you to actually care about. The reboot doesn't have any of that. Everyone is somehow written much worse than all the other games, and the game's dialogue between the characters isn't even halfway decent enough to try and mask it or help recover from it. Volition also fumbles the humor with the boss. This scene right here demonstrates how they misunderstood their own humor from previous titles. In this scene, the boss is depressed because they got fired. They're so depressed they won't even get out of bed or find the strength to toast the damn waffle. I'm assuming Volition thought it was also a little funny to, have one single waffle in the freezer here. But anyways, the whole point is he's or she, depending on whatever gender you decide to pick, they're depressed that they got fired and they're trying to find their will to continue to live. If you were to play any of the other Saints Row games, the boss would have approached this completely differently. And that's what I'm saying. In the reboot, Volition tries to find humor in this over-the-top depressed state. Meanwhile, in any of the other Saints Row games, it would have been the complete opposite. The absurdity of saying, fuck Marshall, I'm gonna find a way to rival this company. I mean, they basically end up doing that, but their approach and their delivery to these jokes and these situations aren't the exact same. And they don't need to be the exact same, but the flavor is still the same, if you know what I mean. It's like you follow the lyrics of a song, but at somewhere you said, fuck it, I'ma ride the beat and just completely freestyle. It's a rap song, but all I know is opera. We're gonna make this shit work somehow. It doesn't work like that. And to be completely honest, starting the game up, I was actually weirdly hyped. I was excited. But once I got introduced to the city, my interest in this game just slowly waned more and more and more. And then once I got to the cosplay stuff, I just could not give any less of a fuck anymore. It's no wonder why this game got so many bad reviews, and it's unfortunate because, I've always been a huge Saints Row fan. Man, this is just another example. Like I said before, it could have been a major success. You don't have to make it the exact same. They could have done like a full-on hard reboot, and they could have just committed to one particular direction, a set of characters, and they could have just almost completely separated themselves from the legacy of the Saints Row games. But it was almost like they had no idea what direction they wanted this game to go in, so they used the humor and approach from the previous games as a blueprint or a roadmap to follow, yet there were some things that the previous games were able to do that made the execution really work. Meanwhile, if you're going to reboot this game, there's so many things that you cannot bring over from the previous games. Even if you wanted to use it as a roadmap or a basic concept of where to start, at some point in the development you had to go back and be like, nah, none of this stuff is going to work in execution because of this, and this. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about Saints Row. I wasted, 30 hours on this game. I beat the story, and I was just horribly disappointed. I didn't want to rip this fucking game apart because everyone else has done it time and again. But I just, after playing Gotham Knights, I just wanted another game to be depressed about. But I actually liked Gotham Knights, so I was hoping that this was also going to be one of those things where I expected the worst, but I got pleasantly surprised. But no, this somehow hit lower than my expectations. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cynic. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you played Saints Row Reboot, let me know what you think, especially if you played, I think the DLC just recently dropped or it's about to drop. Let's talk. Are you interested about it? Play it. I haven't paid attention to it, so I'm curious. Even if you enjoyed this game, you know, you don't have to completely agree with me. You know, let's talk down in the comment section. What's your approach or your stance on this game? I'd love to hear your thoughts, but until next time, I will see you all later.